Mississippi River Basin's biomass, roughly 2,500 fish for every kilometer of river. Populations so enormous, some speculate a total takeover may be impossible to stop.
Carp are right there knocking at the door. So we need to do something soon.
September 10th, 2009. At the Aquatic Center for Conservation at the University of Notre Dame, Professor David Lodge heads an invasive species task force. As an Asian carp Armageddon looms, the task force is fighting back with a cutting-edge tool.
For invasive species in lakes and rivers, one of the big challenges is often just figuring out where the darn organisms are. And it's like searching for a needle in a haystack.
Dr. Lodge and his team have developed a solution for finding the needle in the haystack, locating Asian carp without having to catch a single fish. It's called environmental DNA testing. Just as CSI teams collect DNA samples from criminal evidence, Dr. Lodge's team tests water samples for traces of Asian carp DNA. If they get a positive hit, Asian carp have passed through the test sample's water source. Using this method, the team can test large bodies of water relatively quickly. It's an efficient diagnostic tool that's never been used to fight an invasive aquatic species until now.
The hard work is done back in the laboratory, but that too is relatively quick compared to the effort required to electroshock or net fish in a lake or a river.
Yep, so I think that still sounds like what we want to do is start upstream, get the most urgent information first.
Armed with breakthrough genetic detection, Professor Lodge's team heads to what may be the single most dangerous Asian carp frontline, the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. In 1900, to prevent sewage from entering Lake Michigan, contaminating the city's drinking water, the city of Chicago came up with an idea, reversing the direction of the Chicago River. The result? An ingenious feat of engineering called the Sanitary and Ship Canal. Today, the canal is an important route for cargo ships. But when humans connected the Mississippi River Basin to Lake Michigan, no one predicted that they were building a disastrous invasive species superhighway.
The Great Lakes have on the order of 186 species that are non-native, many of which are damaging.
And there are dreaded cautionary tales. One exotic species already doing major environmental and economic damage is the zebra mussel. After hitching rides from Europe in the ballasts of cargo ships, these mollusks have quickly multiplied and clogged up industrial pipes.
Zebra mussels caused the shutdown of the Monroe power plant in Michigan, which cost millions of dollars. This is one of the most damaging environmental changes that's been going on since humans started moving species.
Here, 30 miles from the entrance to the Great Lakes, the team picks a strategic spot. It's downstream from the last line of man-made defense, an electric underwater fence. In 2002, authorities installed rows of steel cables across a section of the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. Today, volts of DC current flow from the cables into the water, delivering harmless but critical fish-repelling shocks. When it comes to stopping the northward migration of the invasive Asian carp, this single electric fence may stand between control and catastrophe. But many experts fear the barrier's far from foolproof. Is it truly enough to stop an invader from river domination?
The barrier needs to be turned off every 6 months for a short period of time to rehabilitate it. If you turn off the thing and they're sitting there at the door, they're going to swim through.
Back in the lab, the team submits their samples for DNA tests. What the water reveals is shocking.
The Asian carps were several miles upstream from where people had thought they were. It was exciting to discover that we learned something important. On the other hand, it was depressing because the problem is so much more acute than we thought previously.
It's confirmed. Carp are less than 11 kilometers from the electric fence barrier.
All that separates the silver carp from the Great Lakes now is one lock and the electric barrier that the Army Corps of Engineers has installed.
What began as a field test now becomes an urgent investigation.
După ce mănânci sau bei, nivelul pH-ului din gură scade periculos de mult. Iar asta este o veste rea pentru dinții tăi. Mestecă Orbit pentru a restabili nivelul optim al pH-ului. Pentru dinți sănătoși, mestecă Orbit după fiecare masă. Orbit pentru dinți sănătoși. Mănânci, bei, mesteci Orbit.
Curge prin 10 state, dar adună afluenți din 31. Are 4.000 de kilometri și este al patrulea cel mai lung fluviu din lume. Are putere de simbol al Statelor Unite ale Americii. I se mai spune și părintele apelor. Oamenii îl iubesc mai mult decât pentru frumusețe, căci puterea sa fascinează. Mississippi. În fiecare marți la 7 pe Nat Geo Wild. Știm noi cine spune că bărbații sunt ca niște animale. Acum, 3 englezi au luat-o în serios și vor să dovedească ce înseamnă cu adevărat să fii, înțelegeți, cu toate cele. Mâncare, purtare, firesc, sunt și efecte secundare. Una peste alta, o încercare de tot râsul. Viață de animal. În fiecare miercuri la 7 pe Nat Geo Wild.
Ochi în care s-au oglindit crime.
Acești elefanți au văzut lucruri groaznice.
Ochi care au învățat să urască omul.
Sunt probabil gata de răzbunare.
În Mozambic, Bob și Joyce Poole își riscă viața încercând să restabilească o punte.
Au în suflete cicatrici grave.
Nu știm dacă vor putea uita vreodată Elefanții războiului, premiera duminică 3 iunie.
La prima vedere, nu au mare lucru în comun. Dacă privești mai atent, e și mai ușor să te prinzi că nu sunt împreună. Oricum, o cercetare prea de aproape nu-i sănătoasă, pentru că, în general, mușcă. Sunt cei mai mari, mai puternici, mai maestuoși, mai de temut. Cei 5 mari africani: bivolul, rinocerul, elefantul, leul și leopardul. Lor le dedicăm o săptămână de programe. Stăpânii Africii. Începe luni pe Nat Geo Wild.
Ei sunt Bud și Carrie. Casa lor, numai casă nu se mai poate numi.
Îmi dă hiena azi un pupic?
Nu e animal căruia să nu-i întindă o mână. Grădina zoo de acasă. Pe Nat Geo Wild.
The next critical test location is the Chicago River. Lindsay Chatterton with the Great Lakes Project heads up the investigation.
So we are in downtown Chicago. This is the last lock through which boats pass to get onto Lake Michigan itself.
Discovering Asian carp DNA here would mean disaster. If there's a positive hit, it's proof the fish have gone further and slipped past the electric barrier.
I think these fish are much further up the system than anyone previously thought, and really we don't know how far up they are.
Targeting backwater pockets where DNA collects, the team fills 2-liter bottles, noting location, depth, and temperature.
There's no real barrier to stop the fish from here moving into Lake Michigan, so we clearly don't want to find them here.
Back at the lab, The clock is ticking on a potential environmental time bomb. The team puts the samples on ice to slow any DNA degradation and begins testing for Asian carp DNA.
I hope and pray that they won't see anything upstream from the barrier.
But while Dr. Lodge's lab team waits for results,
Focus your chi, Tim.
Do what?
Focus your chi. I think that's some kind of Zen thing, isn't it?
over 160 kilometers away, some anglers are taking a more direct approach.
Let's hit it, brother.
Fighting an invasive killer head on.
All right, guys, here we go.
August 22nd, 2009, 251 kilometers from the Great Lakes, Peoria, Illinois. Zach Naden is a lifelong fisherman and pioneer of an unconventional catch technique, aerial bow fishing.
And it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I shot a fish out of the air. I mean, it's so unorthodox. These fish are actually up in your face, and you know, it's like a combative sport.
I think I got Big Louie hooked.
Both Zach and fellow bow fisher Tim Wells are avid outdoorsmen. Though to some, their technique is highly controversial. When projectile silver carp swarmed their river, conventional rod and reels were useless. These invasive fish are filter feeders who do not take hooked bait. So the anglers decided to up the ante.
We came up with these specifically for shooting these fish. Nobody really had any equipment for shooting them out of the air. As you can see, it's small, it's compact, it's about 3.5 pounds, carbonero. And this reel here, it's got all the line here in the bottle.
Come on, boys, say cheese.
Zach and Tim scour the river for pockets of aerial intruders.
I smell blood in the water, brother.
Let's get it, man, let's get it.
Fish on!
But against carp hordes hurtling out of the water, even seasoned fishermen risk wrecking their equipment.
That didn't take
Look at her,
long.
she's still spinning.
Oh, man.
Doggone it.
Or suffering a knockout blow.
The coolest part about this kind of bow fishing is coming home alive and with all your teeth.
Oh, my God. Whoa.
Suddenly, the archers reach a bursting pack of silver carp.
Keep it going, Chase, in a circle. Circle the thing, Chase.
Now, they're facing a high-energy upheaval known as popcorning.
Oh, my God.
The popcorn is just, it's a feeling of total loss of control.
Oh, my God.
You have no idea what's coming next, whether you're going to make it out, where you're going to get hit. It's, you just got to kind of grit your teeth and bear it. That's what we're looking for there, folks. That's,
Whoa!
slow us down, Chase, slow us down.
Zach fires his bow.
Fish on,
A
fish on,
direct
fish
hit.
on. Boom shakalaka.
Reeling in the line, Zach heaves his catch on board. It's a monster.
Man, now that's a fish.
That's a
That's
giant
a
there.
giant.
Wow. That's one of the bigger ones we've taken this year.
Dude, that's about the biggest as they get, man. You're
Wow.
right at the record right there.
We've got a giant Asian silver carp.
Hold him out here in the sun. He's over 25.
He's over 25 pounds easy. Easy. He's probably about 34, 35 inches long. Just solid muscle. His head, solid bone. Solid bone. That's what gets you hurt when they jump in. That's what you feel when these fish hit you.
It's just one fish, but it's also just the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
Zach and Tim routinely land 100 carp in a single afternoon.
Fish on. Oh!
Though some may find their methods brutal, and it's no solution to a massive problem. To the sportsman, it's a direct way to kill at least a few specimens of an environmental menace, threatening an entire ecosystem, one fish at a time.
I got him, boy. Come on in here.
9 out of every 10 fish right now is an Asian carp. So that's the problem we're facing right now.
Oh, my God.
September 11th, 2009, back at South Bend, Indiana's University of Notre Dame. Scientists know all too well it will take far more extreme measures to end the Asian carp blight. Using their unique forensics DNA testing, Dr. David Lodge and his invasive species task force await the results of the latest water sample. It's devastating news. Some of the samples test positive for Asian carp DNA. Asian carp have breached the electronic barrier.
The trouble with the work we've been doing is we keep pushing the limits and we keep finding carp.
But identifying traces of DNA just past the barrier doesn't yet prove a critical mass of fish have infiltrated Lake Michigan. Further evidence is needed. Facing this nightmare scenario, Dr. Lodge's team heads out to find answers to this alarming and now pressing question. Are they arriving at an ecological crime scene too late? Are the fish already colonizing Lake Michigan? University of Notre Dame researcher Chris Jurdy leads the sampling effort on Lake Michigan.
A carp positive out here would cause a lot of concern because this is the whole point, is to prevent them from getting into Lake Michigan.
I think it would be a big surprise and a terrible thing if they were able to get any DNA in Lake Michigan.
If the team gets a positive hit in Lake Michigan, it reveals a breach of the most disturbing threshold yet, a gateway to the entire Great Lakes, the largest freshwater ecosystem on Earth. Yet, as an eco-catastrophe hangs in the balance, anglers from all over the country flock to the Illinois River to take up a fight they take personally. Here, on the banks of a river under siege, the battle lines are drawn, and the war rages in a competition called the Redneck Tournament.
It's just unbelievable what these fish have done. You could go out boat riding. We took the kids out, went tubing down the river. They've taken all that away from us.
If they hit the Great Lakes and start destroying that the same way that they have destroyed life in the Illinois River, we don't have a chance. We have to stop it before they stop us.
The goal of the tournament is to catch as many airborne carp as possible. Determined, these anglers risk life, limb, and teeth. Rival teams adopt playful names, but their cause is serious. Here, bow fishermen Zach and Tim compete as the maggot eaters. And though the impact on the Asian carp scourge may be insignificant, for them and others, it's a way to raise awareness and take personal action.
Well, we got to do our part for conservation, you know. Everything else is dying because of these fish, so we like to try to get as many out of the river as we can.
Are we ready? Don't hang legs over the side.
Now, lined up on shore, the teams wait for the start.
There we go!
As the countdown begins for one of the world's most original, if controversial, fishing contests, people arm themselves with baseball bats and nerve against a fish that seems to rain upwards into the sky, a vision fit for a biblical plague.
They just fly at you and you really don't know when they're going to hit you in the face or in the shoulder or come in your boat and bleed everywhere.
We got
106. Dude, that's double.
This year, the bow-wielding maggot eaters are determined not to go down without a fight.
We got second last year. We're trying to improve.
106 fish.
You gotta be kidding me.
The maggot eaters tie with Team Showtime.
106.
Are you serious?
This year's bragging rights will have to be shared.
Hey, wait, how do you check the boat? There might be one more.
In the spirit of victory, it's easy to forget the environmental stakes. In total, competitors typically net over 1,500 carp in a matter of hours. Proof these alien fish are multiplying, destroying the river. But using the competition's haul, two men are determined to make a difference. By day, Dr. John Holden and Dr. Tim Leeds work as reproductive specialists. By night, they've invented a massive food processor capable of transforming carp into a crop.
This becomes this. This we sell. At 1,200 pounds of fish will turn into about 400 pounds of fish meal.
The fish are ground up and flash dried, generating almost zero waste. The Heartland processor then converts the tournament haul into two byproducts, oil and powder. The oil is low mercury and rich in omega-3 fatty acids, perfect for nutritional supplements. The powder is a high-protein fish meal, perfect for making commercial fish farm feed pellets.
People consider it a junk fish, so no one wants to fish it, no one wants to eat it. Well, with our machine, we just grind up the bones. That's a source of calcium.
The end product is 14% oil, 5% water, and the remainder is protein.
The processor can handle roughly 2 metric tons of fish an hour, and it's mobile. The doctors hope someday to put it right below the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal's electric barrier. From there, they envision moving downriver, harvesting tons of Asian carp as they go.
Using that model, we can get 800 million pounds of carp out over 5 years.
But is the Heartland processor enough to keep a spreading scourge from destroying an American ecosystem? The answer may depend on whether it's too late to stop the Asian carp and where the invasive fish are headed next.
După ce mănânci sau bei, nivelul pH-ului din gură scade periculos de mult. Iar asta este o veste rea pentru dinții tăi. Mestecă Orbit pentru a restabili nivelul optimal pH-ului. Pentru dinți sănătoși, mestecă Orbit după fiecare masă. Orbit pentru dinți sănătoși. Mănânci, bei, mesteci Orbit.
Știi cât costă o bucătărie? La Practicăr doar 239,9 lei. De acum îți permiți mai mult. Vino și convinge-te! Practicăr, pentru ideile tale.
Chiar și fără să fii acolo, simți cât de importantă e o secție de terapie intensivă pentru un copil abia venit pe lume. Spitalul de copii Marie Curie merită o nouă secție de terapie intensivă nou-născuți, mai mare și mai modernă. Ajută-ne să o construim. Donează și tu 2 euro printr-un SMS trimis acum la 858, iar donația ta va fi dublată de Fundația Vodafone. Îți mulțumim din inimă!
Noul Hyundai i30 te așteaptă în locațiile Țiriac Auto din toată țara. În plus, beneficiezi de cardul Țiriac Auto, singurul card pe care, într-adevăr, te poți baza.
Te deranjează arsurile la stomac? Redacip elimină cauza arsurii. Un comprimat pe zi de Redacip oprește producerea de acid în exces și ajută la vindecarea stomacului iritat. Redacip, zi și noapte, fără arsuri.
Știm noi cine spune că bărbații sunt ca niște animale. Acum, 3 englezi au luat-o în serios și vor să dovedească ce înseamnă cu adevărat să fii, înțelegeți, cu toate cele. Mâncare, purtare, firesc sunt și efecte secundare. Una peste alta, o încercare de tot râsul. Viață de animal. În fiecare miercuri la 7 pe Nat Geo Wild.
Ei sunt Bud și Carrie. Casa lor, numai casă nu se mai poate numi.
Dă hiena azi un pupic?
Nu e animal căruia să nu-i întindă o mână. Grădina zoo de acasă. Pe Nat Geo Wild.
Wild. On the eve of a disaster, as the Asian carp threatens to invade the U.S. Great Lakes, ironically, in the fish's native China, near Shanghai, overfishing in dams are pushing bighead and silver carp to extinction. To compensate, billions of Asian carp are now farm-raised.
These species constitute about 80% of all farmed freshwater fish production in China. These fish are the staple of the population of China.
But stateside, despite urgent headlines of the Asian carp menace, the problem of American tastes persists. Few people here are willing to eat the bony fish. Yet the cost of exporting live carp to China is prohibitively expensive. And efforts to bring the carp into contained U.S. fish farms have only ended in disaster. So disastrous, biologist Dwayne Chapman argues Asian carp escaped into the American wild almost as soon as they arrived, long before the infamous Midwestern flood breaches of the 1990s.
We had well-established populations of big-headed silver carp and grass carp in the wild long before those floods. There were very likely many, many escapes because people weren't being very careful. It was a general feeling that these fish were not like our fish. The rivers that they were established in China were not like our rivers, and that we had all these big predators that would eat them up were they to escape, and all of that turned out to be hogwash, frankly.
It's another chilling cautionary tale against human intervention in nature. Today, Dwayne and others continue to fight on the ever-expanding front lines. But some predict, unless and until U.S. demand for Asian carp increases, keeping up with their breakneck spawning will be impossible. The carp population will continue to grow exponentially, invading new turf each day. Ultimately, we may be forced into a far more macabre solution. Some authorities are convinced no strategy is complete without a deadly plan of attack.
They're devastating the ecology.
Poison.
Poisons like rotenone have been used very effectively in many parts of the world to eradicate populations of unwanted fishes. But you must have a high willingness to accept losses of many other species. We do know how to kill Asian carps. We don't know how to kill them without killing lots of other things.
To date, poison has been used in limited quantities near the electric fence barrier. But as the clock on these spreading carp is ticking, far more aggressive and deadly measures may be all we have left. And now, one of the 21st century's most frightening environmental questions is contained in a few samples of water. Have the tenacious alien fish made it into the $7 billion fishery and ecosystem of Lake Michigan on their way to the Great Lakes?
We have never hoped for negative results more in our life, because it would say that we haven't detected anything this high up.
The results are in. Some samples taken from Lake Michigan test positive for Asian carp DNA. Asian carp have breached the electronic barrier and reached Lake Michigan. As alarms sound across the country, it's just the beginning. If Asian carp spawn reaching a critical mass in the Great Lakes, the effects will be catastrophic. If history is any indicator, it would be an ecosystem nightmare. Asian carp devour all plankton, leaving native fish like bass and walleye to starve. In addition, they digest only half the plant matter they eat, excreting waste that can cause a polluting scourge called algae blooms, clogging the water, killing fish, and destroying human drinking water. A $7 billion fishery could swiftly face decimation. And in time, the fish could move on to their next freshwater target.
You got to care about what's happening to your grandkids' resources as well. And we sure don't want to see anything like that. The Asian carp population explosion in the Great Lakes. It would be a disaster.
It's a vision of invasive species hell. Those trying to stop it share an urgent goal: fight Asian carp by any means necessary. An invasive assault already threatening to bring the Mississippi River Basin to the brink of eco-destruction. Now, the Great Lakes face the same deadly fate. But scientists and fishermen refuse to back down. doing whatever it takes to end the Asian carp invasion.